Hey, I'm Ramon, welcome to my channel, and today I thought I'd talk to you a little bit more directly. So usually when I do these videos, especially about religion, I'm not actually giving you my point of view. I'm going through all of these books here, and I'm getting kind of consensus of the theology surrounding certain passages, certain ideas. I also have prayer books here, basic Bibles in here, Gnostic and Muslim sources on the bottom. Over here you can't see it, but I also got a bunch of Bible dictionaries and other stuff over here. And that's kind of how I do my research when I make these videos. But lately, I've been getting two sets of pushback that comes down to the exact same complaint. Basically, because I haven't been giving you my personal point of view, just kind of the objective point of view, a lot of people have been trying to find the flaws in what I'm saying by looking at my personal theology, which I don't usually share on this channel, and trying to exploit some kind of angle. That just doesn't work because I'm not talking about my personal point of view. I'm talking about what the consensus is. So I thought I'd share my personal point of view because there's a lot of assumptions that happen when people are trying to find a flaw in my arguments. The assumptions that I get from the secular, atheistic and skeptic communities on the internet is that I'm a literalist, I believe in the 5 solas, and possibly I believe in tulip, or that I'm a Calvinist of some sort. And when I say that, I'm not saying that they are saying that I'm a Calvinist. I don't even think a lot of them know what Calvinism is. They just assume Christianity is one thing. Well, it's not. So here you have a secular view of Christianity. Here you have another secular view of Christianity. This is Calvinistic. These are Baptist. This is Catholic. This is Greek Orthodox. This is a Jewish, Reformed Jewish and traditional Jewish Bibles. Over here, you have Anglican, Roman Catholic, European Catholic, Orthodox, and Jewish. So it's not as if it's just one denomination or one rite. Even between rites, there are some differences in theology. For instance, the Byzantine rite and the Latin rite come out a little bit differently. And when you change that language into English, then there's other concepts that come in based on the word choices that we're using for the liturgy. So for instance, these two are the divine office. One is in American English, one is in European English or British English. Even though it's sourcing the exact same material, the theology that comes out of these two are slightly different. The ideas you're going to get here and the ideas you're going to get here are not going to completely match up. Even though they're both Roman Catholic, they're both written in English, because the translation choices are different, you get different theologies coming out of it. So some of the assumptions that people make are that I'm a literalist. I am not. I do not view the Bible literally. While I do believe there is literal description in the Bible, I am looking at the Bible as what it is, a collection of different books spread out over 1,000 years, written by different people, compiled together, inspired by the Holy Spirit, inspiring the authors to write these books. Each book contained in the Bible, I don't look at each one as 100% literal. There's polemic. All of Genesis is a polemic. You have history with Judges and Chronicles, and those histories are not even complete histories. They're summaries of history books, probably written as a record, as a reference for the Jewish scribes and for the Jewish kings that were using this reference to find those other books. Well, the books that they are referencing are gone. So we don't have any idea of how accurate the books that are being referenced were. We just have these summaries of those books, which a summary is never going to be a complete record. So you don't know how accurate it was supposed to be in the original context. So a lot of skeptics and atheists will say, okay, well, what history is in the Bible? Well, I mean, it's not hard to know. there's a whole section called the histories. Okay? So what books are even making historical claims? Well, you're going to have Chronicles, First Chronicles, Second Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Tobit, Judith, Esther, Maccabees, and Second Maccabees. Those are the only books in the Old Testament, or the Apocrypha, that are making any historical claims. The rest of the books aren't. The rest of the books are polemic, poetic, novella. They're a different style of writing. So to go through the entire book, to go through the philosophy books and try to look for literal history is insane. It's inane. You're not going to find what you're looking for. This is not a science book. This is not a book about science. So when you guys make that kind of argument and those kind of assumptions to me, what you're doing is you're talking to these people. These people take all that as literal, okay? This is going to be Baptist and Calvinist. Also take a more literal sense of the Old Testament. But that's not the same as a Catholic. A Catholic is going to view it as mystical, ethical writings. They have morals to them. So that's how secular humanists, atheists, and skeptics criticize my commentary. Well, there's another side of that. So the religious people also criticize some of the things that I'm saying. Let's talk about Muslims first. So a lot of Muslims on my channel will tell me that something's not true because the Quran says it's not true. Well, here's the thing. I'm a Christian and a Catholic. So I'm going to prefer this version of theology to the Quranic version of theology, as those theologies are very different. That doesn't mean that I don't respect that religion, but I have a lot of religious texts that I've read from a lot of different religions. If I wasn't a Catholic, I would probably be Jewish. Okay, that'd be the next religion I'd choose. And if I wasn't Jewish or Catholic, I'd probably be a Taoist, because I was a Taoist for a very long time, and I find that philosophy and way of living very attractive, and the ethics of that way of thinking very attractive. So just to show you, so here is Eastern Philosophy Classics. I have collections of Eastern philosophy. I have tons and tons of books that most of you probably never even heard of. I got, a lot of you probably never heard of Changzu or Meniscus. Mencius, or however you pronounce it in the Latin, considering it's a Chinese name. So I'm not expecting Protestants to agree with me, and I'm not expecting Muslims to agree with me. When I read the Quran, which I read, I finished reading it. I'm not making more videos of it. I lost about 150 or 200 videos, and I don't plan on re-recording them because the audience that I was talking to became more hostile, and it was less and less enjoyable. Now, I want to be very clear. It wasn't the Muslims who were being unagreeable or unenjoyable. It was actually the Dawa people who had infiltrated my comment section, and they were just simply trolling and talking about how or implying that I agreed with Islam as truth. I don't. I'm going to go with this over the Quran. And on top of that, I look at this through a philosophical lens. I'm going to go with what science shows to be true and then see how that applies to my theology. I'm not going to take my theology and see how that applies to science. Okay? That's a very big philosophical gap that a lot of people don't understand. I look at what science and history and math says is true, and that's one category, and then how I live my life is based on what these books say. The way that the Quran would have me live my life is not a way that would be productive for me. Okay, so that's secular, atheist, and that's Muslims. What about these people? What about the Protestants? Well, I've read Martin Luther. I haven't read Calvin. I haven't read Wycliffe. Okay. I have a lot of church fathers that I love reading. Almost all of this here has a lot of church father stuff. I have collections of church fathers' writings. I have Bart Ehrman's translations of the Apostolic Fathers. I mean, I have a lot of historical Christian doctrine, so I'm not inclined to believe Luther. I'm just not. I think the five solas and tulip are wrong. I know that there are Catholics who are also Calvinists. As a Catholic, I don't hold to the five solas. I just don't. I don't hold to the five solas, and I don't hold to tulip. That's not my belief system, and I don't view Christianity that way. I agree with St. Augustine. I like Basil. I like John Christensen. John Christensen, I think, is amazing. He's an amazing theologian, and I agree with almost everything he says when it comes to it. I also am a Roman Catholic, so I go with the church ruling. Church only has ruled on about 5 or 7 things in all history. So, those things are things that are outside of the Bible, and they're not hard to, if you will, submit to go with a Quranic term or Islamic term. It's not hard to submit to the Catholic Church's ruling on the Virgin Mary, on Immaculate Conception. So I don't have a problem with that. I also don't have a problem with statues. Okay, so that's Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, the patron saint of my name. That's where I get my name from. So I don't have a problem with saints. I don't have a problem with any of that. So when I talk about my personal theology, what am I talking about? And this video is getting a little bit long. So I'm a Roman Catholic. I have a lot of sympathies for the Byzantine and Eastern rites of the church. If Catholic priests were able to get married, I probably would be a priest. But because they're not able to get married, I wasn't a priest. I do pray the Liturgy of the Hours, which are these books here. I do religious stuff. I have a wife who's an atheist. That's what's going on there. I'm not trying to make claims to things that I don't understand. And I also believe in nuance. And I've also read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and the Mesopotamian myths, the Atarhasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I've read all these works. And I have collections of Gnostic Bibles. And I'm familiar with source material outside of the Bible. So when I say what I'm saying, I'm not just taking a hardline approach. I'm looking at both angles, and I'm saying, here's the consensus, and here's the answer to whatever question is presented to me. I am not making a judgment. I am just simply reporting. So this is the closest thing to a judgment you're going to get on this channel for when it comes to these kind of things, when it comes to my talks on religion. When I say something, I'm referencing this material here and the church fathers. And that's what I'm referencing. Like I said, I've gotten a lot of pushback from atheists who mistakenly think I'm a literalist. I get a lot of pushback from Protestants who don't understand what Catholicism is or what it even teaches. And I get a lot of pushback from ultra-traditionalists who want to go back to the Latin language Mass and who mistakenly think that the Catechism of the Catholic Church is dogma and that they mistakenly think that doctrine cannot evolve. Doctrine can evolve and opinions change. The Bible itself is a record of opinions changing. And if you don't see that, then you're confused. What the Bible teaches and explains in the Old Testament changes. Jesus was revolutionary. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand your faith. I get it. You want it to be simple. You want the Old Testament to be literal, and you want there to have been a real Adam and Eve, and you want no evolution. You don't want to say that you evolved from a monkey. You don't want to say you evolved from an ape. But you didn't. You evolved from a common ancestor. Apes and monkeys and humans have a common ancestor. Not we evolved from a monkey. Humans, monkeys, all have a common ancestor. That creature, whatever that was, that humanoid, has a common ancestor with all other creatures. That then has a common ancestor with all life. That's how evolution works. It evolves. The same way faith evolves. Before Christianity and before Judaism, there were other religions. And the Mesopotamian myths and the culture surrounding influenced the Bible. Okay? The texts in the Bible, if you actually read it straight through, talk about when these people, when these Israelites or proto-Israelites discover texts that they didn't know existed, and then they add it back in, and that becomes part of the Old Testament, and they lose books that we don't know what they said, and that faith evolves, and stuff gets left in temples get destroyed, people get conquered, people come back, and then they find those texts, and those texts are referencing other books that were lost, and it's just a historical mess, because that's how history evolved. And finally, by the time you get past the Jewish exile, you start to get a more stringent theology that's influenced by many of the cultures that have interacted with the Jewish people. That's what happens. It isn't until you get to the Apocrypha that you really even see that evolution hit. And if you take the Apocrypha out, if you take the Deuterocanonical books out, you lose that lesson. Without those books, you cannot see the full picture of the evolution of faith, and therefore you get stuck looking at it as only strictly literal. I know. People are then going to say, well, what about Jesus? What about Isa? What about Yeshua? What about him? I get it. Some of you don't believe in miracles, and you will hard line on the miracles as a reason for you not to believe. Miracles happen every day. Okay? I've had amazing things happen in my life that I can't explain. The Bible is the story of the Jewish people's understanding of God and their relationship to the universe and to God. And as their understanding of God changes, God doesn't change, their understanding changes, their religion changes. And as their environment and the historical events around them change, they adapt. The temple is the center of worship until it wasn't. There were temples around the Jewish temple on mountains until there weren't. Judaism was confined to Israel until it became part of Babylonian and Egyptian culture, until it became part of the German culture, until it became part of the American culture. You can't just look at this one set of books and try to make a judgment on the religion based on the beliefs of a 15th century monk who left the church. You can't base your understanding of their understanding based on the scientific discoveries of today. Because they're talking based on what they understood at the time, and a lot of that stuff, if you filter through it, holds true today. You just have to decode the words and see what they're saying, because a lot of our ideas are based on their ideas. Yeah, our concepts, our understanding has evolved past their understanding, but without their understanding, without that base, we don't get to where we are now. And disrespecting that because you have a problem with your parents, or because you don't like how a certain church member or a certain priest or a certain pastor did his thing, that doesn't change the fact that we owe a debt of gratitude for the societies that these books have evolved, have been the foundation for. Anyway, I can go on. I can defend Islam in much the same way. I can defend a lot of the ancient books of religions who have disappeared in a lot of the same way. But I'm Roman Catholic, and I believe in God, and I trust the Bible. I just want to put that out there. Peace, like, and subscribe. I hope this answers a few questions.